Hey everybody, it is 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning, and that means you are listening to Choppin' It Up here on Crazy Country 105.9. I am very excited today because today's guest comes from one of the most important families in the history of the Santa Ynez Valley, the Firestones. They helped shape this place through farming, wine, land, stewardship, and a deep belief in building things that last longer than a single lifetime. Adam Firestone grew up here right in the valley, carrying that legacy early on before stepping away to serve our country in the military, where he learned discipline, leadership, and accountability the hard way. He came home and played a key role at Firestone Vineyards, then helped take a very bold leap into a completely different world with Firestone Walker Brewing Company, which just turned 30, helping turn it into one of the most respected craft breweries in America and beyond. Wine and beer, Adam's story really is about evolution and honoring where you come from while having the courage to build what comes next. This is a true Valley story, a family story, a story about doing things the right way. Adam Firestone, welcome to Chopping It Up.
Good morning.
How are you doing, sir?
Very well, very well.
Well,
Thank you.
Now that I finally wrangled you in here, I have a few questions, and I hope you got answers to them. How did the Firestone family find the Santa Ynez Valley?
So this was quite a while ago, late 60s.
Yeah.
Weather study was done from some egghead out of UC Davis, and there was weather studies going on for quite a while, and this is the beginning of microclimate concepts and similar, and it was tied to agriculture, specifically viticulture, and this study, the three lines all coalesced in this part of the world. They thought this might be what we're looking for in terms of temporal Mediterranean climate, sunlight, such, degree, temperature days, and the rest. Anyway, that was the impetus. And from that, a small investor group was put together. And my grandfather, Leonard, who knew nothing about grape growing. He had some citrus down the Coachella, but nothing in this area was talked into or invested in this original concept and said, hey, let's plant some grapes in Santa Ynez and see if it works, see if this study has merit.
Really? Mm-hmm. So when you guys, so that was about 52 years ago, is that correct?
A little more than that, but yeah.
Okay.
I think the study was 70, somewhere around there. And then they acquired the land 71, so whatever that is, 55 years now, 6 years. And then, that's how it began.
One of the things I was kind of shocked by was the Firestone Vineyard and Winery that is there today was built almost immediately. Is that correct?
Almost.
Yeah.
So, and I got to, first of all, this is sort of when you start talking about who climbed Everest first. Everybody goes back to, did Tenzing Norgay put his foot on it first, or was it Sir Edmund? And they both went to their graves, never telling. Okay, so if we're going to be honest or more historically accurate, we know that there were grapes planted at the Mission, of course, and then in Santa Cruz Island had a plantation for the main valley there. Pierre Lafond, was way back. The Daviges down in Refugio had a small vineyard there that was also part of that, which is coincidentally my wife's great uncle, Davidge. Anyway, so. But I think the point of the Chillingsworth, Len Firestone, then a fellow named Dean East, who was managing some of the investing, was that this was going to be more of a commercial operation versus something that was maybe kind of more sideline boutique, putting apple trees in your backyard. That I'm not trying to minimize what was done. No, I
totally understand that.
But that was I think the impetus behind putting real investment and investors into it.
And when I drive by Firestone, I roll my brain back a little bit to what, we've been here 25 years, which is half that time. Mm-hmm. And I roll my brain backwards in time and think about, there were people that lived in this Santa Ynez Valley that have those stories from 50 years ago where they said, I drove the pass and I didn't see another car on the pass. Mm-hmm. And the fact that you guys, led with science first, then established a vineyard and winery of scale, and built really something in the middle of nowhere that you kind of had the dream first, and then you build it and they will come. And I've said many, many times that your family is the reason 90% of the wineries in the Santa Ynez Valley eat, because you planted a lot of different varietals. People went to a kind of like college on you a little bit, thought what grows best where, and then had that cachet of a big name. In all honesty, I grew up in Southern California, and Firestone Boulevard was kind of a big deal.
Right.
And my grandmother, actually in World War II, worked at the Firestone tire factory right there, which is now the Citadel. Mm-hmm. And the fact that when you came here, bringing a name, bringing an establishment that really drew people from Southern California to find the Santa Barbara County wine country, and I believe it was your father who established the Santa Barbara County AVA. Is that correct?
Right. So the vineyard was obviously the first step.
Sure.
The second step, which was Brooks, was let's build a winery here, change the business plan. Instead of sending these grapes up to Napa or the other big wineries, we're gonna crush commercially here, and let's create the first estate on-site crush winery at commercial scale.
Wow.
And that was, he hatched that plan between his dad and the Suntory liquor company, who put up some of the investment money for it. Yep. And that was done in time for the first harvest of 1975.
Wow. So what year were you here at the time as well? Mm-hmm. And were you did you grow up in that era as well?
Yeah. I was essentially raised in the great metropolis of Las Olivas. I since moved to Ballard.
For the quiet life. Yeah.
It's not as hustle and bustle. We have 2 stop signs.
Congratulations. Yeah. Still no stoplights. There we go.
But yeah, so that was, and we used to live on Figueroa Mountain Road, right where the old Bacon Ranch was back then. Yeah.
Awesome. So as that progressed through time, you grew up here in the Santa Ynez Valley, in the winery, part of the operations. I know when I first met you still had an office at the Firestone Winery. Mm-hmm. And about 30 years ago now, you established the Firestone Walker Brewing Company.
Right.
And how did that take place?
So some of the older Valley residents will recall that Brooks took off for political office in 1994, and I had returned to the Valley by then and had an agreement with the family that I help out on the wine side with Dad disappearing to Sacramento. And in the small print of the verbal understanding was that I had this brewing idea that I wanted to pursue, but it was a pretty modest business plan, if you will. It wasn't much of a business plan. I shopped it around to a bunch of different people and had the idea to make a small craft beer in a limited way using essentially winemaking equipment. And I just struggled. I couldn't find anybody who would really bite on the idea. And so the only person I found was my brother-in-law, David.
So you jumped off the bridge and you brought your brother-in-law with you.
He was the perfect partner. He knew nothing about the beer. He knew nothing about the beverage industry, and he had no money. So that's where it started.
So you started that up at Area 51.
Right.
Right, which is a place that's near and dear to my heart because we actually make our wine there. When we bring grapes in, we always make the joke that we better inoculate it quick because there's so much yeast just crawling around the walls that something else is going to inoculate it very quickly.
Right. Originally that was built by Doug Kramer, that building way back, and he was making champagne there. I think Ken Brown was.
It has a pretty amazing lineage.
History. Yeah. And luckily no one from the county is listening now, but.
Pleased.
We didn't have necessarily a beer making permit, but to be in our defense, it wasn't prohibited either. It just wasn't prescribed anywhere. And, so we always considered ourselves a little bit like Steve Jobs building computers in the garage in Cupertino. No one said there was a law against building computers in your garage in Cupertino. So he did. And so we started there in the corner. In fact, just in the west corner of the building. And that's where we first hatched DBA.
So you brought up DBA, and I think that's a pretty interesting little point because that beer really kind of put you on the map. So, and you have a patent on it, is that correct?
We did. So we And this is more by expediency and necessity than perhaps technology, but we were brewing it in old wine barrels, and so that was our cooperage. And so we came up with this device that was modeled after a far more efficient and useful device built in England called a Burton Union. And it was our own version of that, so we patented it. And every batch was barrel made back in the early days. And we had some old wine tanks we were using too, and we had a dairy tank that we used for heating water and so on. I mean, it was pretty...
A few of those tanks are still there.
Yeah, I know.
I look at them all the time.
Not all of them leak.
No,
either.
not all. Well, the funny part of that is, Mark Hertel is a very good friend of mine, and he likes to describe himself as employee number 02.
Yes, he was.
He was. And
Yeah.
I go, "Do you have a badge?" And he goes, I don't even think I was actually on the books, right?
No, we paid him. I'm pretty sure.
No, you paid him, but I don't know if he was an actual employee. But he likes to tell everybody.
No, he was. He was our second employee.
Second employee.
And
he said he would crawl in and dig things out.
That's right.
Yeah.
He was. Well, he was on the football team, and he needed to bulk up.
That's right.
And so he showed up, earlier in the year, and so we had him lifting kegs, and it was perfect.
That's fantastic. So, if we rewind a little bit, so there was an era between the winery, and we're talking about you personally now, being at the Firestone Vineyard, and then hatching Firestone Walker Brewing.
Right.
And what did you do during that time?
After the wine, or during the wine, you mean?
No,
sorry.
After school, I was really bringing into your military service.
Right. So I, like a lot of young males, was in a how do you put it? Just a ill-defined. My compass was kind of spinning back in the post-high school into college days, and I just wasn't sure what I wanted to do, kind of thing, like many young men are. And one day, it's unintentional. I was at a college, the recruiting thing, and the tent, the card table was there, and the recruiter was there, and I met him. I said, "Oh, this sounds good. You get paid and run around, and free haircuts and so on." I thought, okay. And then, it's complete hack. And there's just no science to those decisions, right? You kind of make them on an impulse, and then. Actually, at the next career fair, the guy wasn't there, but the Navy guy was there, and I was really impulsive, so I actually signed up for my first year in the Navy.
Really?
Yeah. And I got back to school the final semester, and the Marine recruiter was back, and he saw me across the room. I still talk to the guy, and he said, "Jesus, Adam, what happened? You were here. I thought I had you signed up. You went in the Navy."
He was excited.
Yeah, and he goes, "You're not happy?" Or I go, "No, it wasn't what I expected. Nothing wrong with the Navy. I'm not running it down. It just wasn't what I was looking for." And so I ended up resigning my commission and starting all over again in the Marines.
Really?
Yeah.
So how old were you when you entered the Marines?
I think I signed up at 19 or 20.
So after school?
So I was graduated, and then I got commissioned. So I did the 10-week OCS program in Quantico.
Yeah.
And it's no fun. My son, Peter, is there right now.
Really?
Yeah. He just showed up right before Christmas and said, he left his New York City job and said, "Dad, I'm joining the Marines. I didn't want to tell you because you talked me out of it." And I was like, "Okay, when do you start?" He goes, "January 11th. So he stared last week.
Congratulations.
Yeah, well, we'll see.
We'll see.
He's got a long way to go.
So how many sons have you had that have entered the Marines? Two.
Oldest and now youngest, yeah.
What a legacy.
Yeah, they've got that same genetic defect their dad has,
So you entered the Marines, and you served for how long?
Let's see. So I was, that was 84, and then I served until 91.
84 to 91.
Right. And
you went overseas?
Yeah. So, I got out.
By the way, I got you in front of me. I'm asking every question I can. Okay. I'm sorry, but you got to do it.
Back through the history books.
Yeah.
So
People
I did
want to know.
It was back then. It was peacetime. Everything was, that was in the late 80s. Had a great experience. East Coast a year, and then Pendleton, and 3 years in Hawaii, and then I got out in July of 1990. And then just literally a few weeks later, Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. My old unit in Hawaii deployed immediately, and I sort of giggled at them and wrote them cards and said, they're all melting in the desert heat. And I'm
like
on
a real Marine would do with their friends.
As
Yeah,
they were
that's
told.
exactly right.
And then the next thing, I had a reserve piece to my contract. That's how it used to be. You'd have active duty and then a reserve commitment. And I started to see, as we got into the late summer and into the fall, the President Bush then was starting to call everybody up. And I thought, uh-oh. So I ended up signing onto a reserve unit out of L.A. that had gone over and been sent back. And I thought, okay, I'm not going to go over. This group's going to be fine. And I was with them maybe 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden, everybody got activated. So everybody got sent. That was a strange point in time. But for the Marines, especially West Coast Marines,
yeah,
everybody went.
Everybody went. I have a good friend, Chris Wood, who served as well and was in some of the first Humvees driving into Kuwait when they were lighting all of the oil on fire, and slept underneath a Humvee for a full year, which absolutely unbelievable stories that I need to have him come on and tell.
I recognize that very well.
Right.
Yeah.
So what level did you serve at? Were you
by then I was a captain. So,
really?
Yeah. So you go in as a second lieutenant and then promoted first, and then by then I'd been made captain before I left Hawaii. Yeah.
I just bring that up because I think that's a pretty interesting part of your life and your story that maybe not a lot of people know.
Yeah.
And I very much respect it because from an outside perspective, someone growing up in the Santa Ynez Valley in a Firestone and Firestone winery and things like that you would have the presence of mind to do something like that. And like we were discussing earlier, I watched a video of you it was a recruitment video. Mm-hmm. And what you say in that video is pretty amazing, where you're like, people promised me things my whole life, but I entered the Marines to be broken down, and whatever I build up after that is me. And that's something, just as a personal note, I've always really respected about you.
Yeah, it's hard to describe. It's not for everybody. And as I told Peter when he said, "Oh, Dad, I didn't want to tell you because you were going to talk me out of it," it's like, buddy, that's not how it works. If somebody's thinking about it, you can't talk them into it. But if they've already decided they're going to do it, you can't talk them out of it. Yeah. There's no amount of logic that you can apply that is going to change it. And it's for those who have a son or a relative or somebody who's thinking of going into service, it's not. I would always say it's not some kind of like rationally well thought out intentional decision like I'm going to go to Harvard Business School or something, and this is why. And it's got a combination of impulse and just sort of burns from within. And, most of the time you're not trying to save the world. You're just trying to find something out, scratch an itch that's deep inside you that you can't describe.
Well, I fully respect it. I really appreciate your service. Thank you very much. And the fact that your sons looked up to you and also made that decision says a lot about not only you, but your family as well.
Thanks.
We're talking to Adam Firestone on Crazy Country 105.9. We talked about the winery. We talked about we talked about your service. We talked about Firestone Walker Brewing, and I have a few questions about that, and hope you'll enjoy these. Way back in the day, you guys built a building in Buellton, California,
right?
And that was going to be the home, I assume, of Firestone Walker Brewing,
right?
And I've been up to your place up in Paso and seen the city that you've literally built, which is absolutely a great tour. If anybody's up in that area, stop by and go see it because it is fantastic. Take us through the beginning era of Firestone Walker Brewing and why you guys went to Paso and why don't we see what's in Paso and Buellton? Because that would have been absolutely amazing for the Santa Ynez Valley.
It would have saved so much commuting time for me, selfishly. When you look at something backwards 30 years plus, you'd like to think everything was part of this big, beautiful, intentional plan. And it's just life doesn't cut that way.
Sure.
The bumps in the road that come you don't anticipate. So the early years were really tough. I mean, we got in almost at the time that the craft beer industry started to collapse. I mean, collapse more than the beer industry is collapsing now to a certain degree.
Sure.
And to a certain degree, the wine business is now.
Or a lot of industries currently.
A lot of industries, yeah. And that's
we're
just
not
life.
immune.
That's right. It's the scar tissue of business, and it happens. And you don't. So back then, we knew that we needed a real brewery and we didn't have a real brewery in Area 51. That was a make-believe brewery built of auction parts and home welding and,
And currently a make-believe winery.
it's a lot better looking winery than it was brewery, let me tell you.
We love it. We love it.
And we knew we wanted to join the professional ranks of brewing. And brewing is like a dairy. Cleanliness and the sanitation levels are so important, and the fit and finish of the welds and the stainless and all that it's critical. Beer is a very sensitive liquid. It's much more susceptible to problems than is wine with the higher alcohol and so on. Anyway, so we slowly were building Buellton, which we built in phases as we could afford it. And the idea was we're going to create a real brewery inside the north end of that building, and we got pretty close. Mm-hmm. And so I think we started in '98 building, and then by 2001, much of that's how slow this thing was.
Sure.
It was literally hand to mouth. We had bought at an auction a brew house, it's called, the whole brewing system, which we got for pennies on the dollars, and we cut it out of a building up in Seattle and hauled it down ourselves, and we're all ready to start. In fact, it was sitting in there as if it was working. It never worked because we didn't have the money to hook it up. That was the next problem. It's one thing to buy it used and just set it there, but the real expense comes in the utilities and the plumbing, electrical, and so on. So right about that time, the Slow Brewing Company had fallen on some hard times up in Paso, and they just built that facility, or the first piece of that facility, and they got ahead of their creditors, and the business didn't go as they'd hoped, and so on. And so the bank ended up owning it. And they called us about it, and we said, "God, no! The boat that sinks once will sink again. We're like, we don't want any part of this. It's way out of our budget, and so on." And then we heard that it was completely closed. Nobody was operating it, and the bankers came back to us a second, third, and fourth time. And then finally, we figured out that the bottom line is they just wanted the building. They wanted all the stuff out of it. And we'd heard that they were doing that because the used equipment guys were circling. And they were offering us parts out of the brewery. And I knew it was coming from there because we recognized what they were describing. So then we went back to the bank and found out that they really wanted it gone. So this is luck. This is our true story. But we didn't have the money. They wanted $250,000 deposit. And what we did is we came to an agreement where we would buy the building. I think it was $1 million, and that's the whole building. This is
really,
yeah, it wasn't expensive. That was the value to them after the costs of cleaning all the stuff out. I'm close enough. So then we said, well, we need $250,000. So we got an escrow. Dave and I are looking at each other. We got to come up with $250,000 now, to perform on this thing.
By the way, your little garage project has really grown.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
No doubt.
Here you go.
No doubt. But at the time, you're looking at each other like, okay, we got the first part. We got this thing under contract. Well, it turned out that Matt Brindleson, who would be another one of these luck masters that came our way, had been the brewer, and he was still there. All the other employees had been laid off and gone into other careers and left. But he was still in town, and he still had the keys, and he was still had all the tanks full of beer. So we cut a deal with the bank to give us early occupancy. So we moved in July 4th, 2001, and everything was full in there. Because when the bank took over, they didn't have the ability to sell alcohol. They didn't have the licenses. We did. So we shifted everything to there. And so we set about bottling up everything that was there. There was glass and labels. They had been making some beer under contract.
It was turnkey.
Yeah, it was turnkey. It was ready to go. It was Trader Joe's labels that were
really.
Yeah, that was. So I had sold to Trader Joe's, and the great buyer back down there. He knew what our situation was. Bought over $250,000 worth of beer that we bottled out of that place. And God bless Trader Joe's from a supplier standpoint. They used to pay their bills instantly.
Really?
And so we came up with the money for the deposit. Then we needed to close. And so now it's July, turns into August, and the bank's like, hey, it's time to close on this deal. And we kind of, we're working on it. Our financiers, we need like $750,000 now. And we fumbled around for, I think, another 6 months building money. And finally, we went back to the bank and just said, we don't have the money, because we didn't. Mm-hmm. And we talked them into lending it to us.
Okay, keep going. This is fantastic.
These are the people in your life. So I always, there's a lady named banker named Sandra Fahey, I think was her name, and she was just wonderful. And they sort of looked at us and smiled and said, these guys are plucky, we'll go ahead and do it. And they financed the building to us. So we literally moved in for sweat equity, and that was the beginning of Paso. And meanwhile, now we're saying there's no way we can pull off Buellton because we are, every dollar was used in getting this new business going up there. And that was really the one life break that changed everything, because now we had no partners. It's just David and I.
Yeah.
We owed the bank obviously a bunch of money, but we could pay that back over time and obviously have. And the original little one parcel that we bought is now, if you go by there, it's now 80 acres, and we've had a great run. We're very, very fortunate. And it was just from that first opportunity when those bankers looked across the table and said, okay.
That is a great American success story. I mean, but by the way, the fact that you're being very vulnerable on this, which I really appreciate, because anybody from the outside looking in would go, "Oh, these guys did it, and then this is how they did it." Of course, they bing bang boom. But when you're talking about the struggle, right? Like every other business in the world, where you're like, okay, we have a dream, we'd like to make it a reality. We're going to need we need to get some people on base, and then get them on, get them over, and get them home. And every night you get up and you think about that. You're like, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do this? You're obsessed by it. And pretty soon it just kind of consumes you. And watching you guys from afar, right? I would have thought that the story was much different than the story you told. And it makes me like you more. It makes me root for you guys more.
You understand the key ingredient here is just timing and luck. A little perseverance, no doubt. Because there was definitely long periods of time where we were looking at each other like, this is not going to end well. We got our houses guaranteed and so on. But that said, you meet characters. We met Matt Brynelson, who was the head brewer, who stayed with us. He stayed with the band, so to speak. And then as we got the pilot relit there, he called some of his key team members back, flew back and joined the crew, and up we went.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So what, in the faces of that property growing, you guys, like you said, you went from how big was the first initial property? An acre or two?
A half-acre parcel with a little lot behind it.
Right, and there was nothing around it, in all honesty.
Empty. Yeah.
And as you guys grew, what was the mindset there? I mean, you're like, we need another tank. We need to put in another tank, because now if I drive by, it's like it's a city.
Right.
I mean, you guys have an air traffic controller station in the middle, really directing trucks.
Right.
I mean, when you guys have you're having a beer fest coming up in May, I believe.
That's right.
May 30th. Oh, I got the numbers on the top. I did my research.
Thank you.
I've seen the video when you let people into like Beer Fest last year, and you have thousands of people and 60 different breweries that are all coming together with this big thing. But it is truly a shocking amount of square footage and the size that Firestone Walker Brewing has grown to.
Right.
In craft brewing, how did that process take place?
Well, obviously 2001 was a big kick for us, because all of a sudden now we've got a brewery. And so we did grow pretty well through those. But there was phases, like all industries, where the wind is at everyone's back and people grow triple, double, they post these crazy. We never did. We always had just good, steady, solid growth all the way through. Mm-hmm. So managed growth, which ultimately is healthy growth in our view, because we never did the big money borrow, or never had the big capital raise, never had that. We had bank notes and loans and so on, but never the big, overhang of investors or something like that. So
you were really answering to yourselves.
Exactly. Yeah. And we just didn't want to be terrified by the business. I think both of us felt like, if we end, modestly, that's fine. But let's just make sure we're at the end, not don't end early. So, it was organic. And one of the blessings of being where we are, and anybody listening to this who's grown up in this part of the world knows, it's pretty magical for a lot of reasons. I've toured breweries all over the world, and the troubles that they get into in cities and in some municipalities and places with traffic and access, and we just don't have here. Mm-hmm. We're blessed. We've got mountains on one side, ocean on the other, strip of land in the where we all live, And so we could get talent. We can get people who were, trained in brewing from Siebel or UC Davis, and you can get them to settle in the Central Coast. They're like, hell yeah, I can go here. You want me to go to, Milwaukee? Done. I'm here. And so that's been a feature.
80 degrees in January is a pretty compelling feature of where to live.
Exactly. I'm not going to get political into the business climate. It's
incredibly difficult.
That is a disadvantage. But we don't have any snow days. The brewery has never been closed for snowplows, which is not true of a lot of Midwestern breweries. So there's features like that are trade-off. But I think the talent, the space. We're right on the Salinas River up there on one side. We got railroad tracks. We got a precious piece of turf, and that's been instrumental to us. We've grown up symbiotically with the wine industry, more the SLO County one up in Paso, but it's the same as Santa Barbara County. You have that same curiosity of visitors who come in. They're curious about what you're doing. They sample and then they go home, right? And it's viral in that respect. And so we profited from that greatly. There's a lot of folks come through the tasting rooms and understand what you're doing, and they form a connection, and that becomes part of their history, and they feel that connection to the beers and to the brand and what we've been up to. And so we felt that over the last 3 decades.
You bring up a very interesting point, and I do think that's a magical part of not only the Central Coast, because if you go to Napa or you go anywhere else in the world or any of these other breweries that you can go visit or Golden or wherever, people feel a real connection to the people that are making it. And I think that you've taken that wine industry, shake hands, this is what we're doing, let me show you around, connection with the customer, where the customer feels like this is my brand, right? Right. And when you get that, you've really got something you have a real long-term customer.
Exactly.
And for us, that's always been, that's our bread and butter, right? It's somebody comes in, says, I don't drink wine, I drink Saarloos and Sons, right? That's my whole goal in life. But with Firestone Walker, I want to talk about the restaurant and things like that, but I think this is a perfect place to segue. You guys did the 805 brand. And for me, I saw that happen. I went, oh, geez, who came up with that? Because that is solid. Because you established a zip code, owned a zip code, and not only owned a zip code with great branding, black and white, which I'm very partial to. The beauty of that is now if you live in the 805 area code, this is your beer. And how did that come about? Well,
to be fair, the telephone company came up with it.
Very fair.
To give credit where credit's due.
Right.
And
by the way, I have to do this. We're talking to Adam Firestone of Firestone Walker Brewing in the Santa Ynez Valley. I got to do that every 15 minutes. Sorry about that.
Still here.
Yep.
So 30 years and 15 minutes. I'm still here.
You're doing great.
The 805. Look, we were making our wholesaler, Pacific Beverage, which is the Giordano family, covered 3 counties, and beer is very much about territory and wholesaling. Beers, there's 2 lessons in the beer industry which you learn early. Beer is heavy and beer rusts. And by that, it means you got to focus on trucking and how you get it from A to B, and you got to recognize it's perishable.
Absolutely.
So closer to the brewery, the fresher it is. We had a wholesaler lined with the 3 counties, which also happened to be the area code for everybody in the 3 counties. And then we thought, as we're thinking, we just need something that everyone's going to remember. What if we use the first 3 digits of their cell phone? They're never going to forget that.
Yep.
And that was the idea. And it was only sold in the Tri-Counties. But then as we quickly learned, especially in SLO County, you get an enormous number of folks from the Central Valley that come over the weekends, especially when it's hot in the Central Valley.
Oh, yeah.
From Bakersfield, Modesto, Tulare, Fresno, and so on. And they come west every weekend. Yep. And then they started carting it back. And so the 3 Central Coast counties, Kern, Kings, and Tulare, exploded with it too. And so all of a sudden we realized...
It was novel. They were bringing something back from the West Coast.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was an import.
Yeah. You guys are the original Smokey and the Bandit. Exactly. People are bringing home cases of 805 on the flatbed truck.
Is this legal? No.
No, but it sure is fun.
So that was, then we knew that this thing could be exported, so to speak, and it did. It hit a nerve. So that has been a signature piece of our the wind behind our backs.
Well, I remember being at I think it was Anaheim Stadium one day, and I saw Firestone Walker Brewing there, and I'm like, oh, these guys hit the big time, and that was probably 20 years ago. So with 805, has 805 become its own separate entity that kind of not runs on its own, but has it become its own little monster that's out there in the world? Because if I drive up in SLO County,
right,
I see 805 billboards. Right. I see more 805 billboards than I do Firestone Walker specific billboards.
Right. And, the short answer is yes. So, like all things, you don't predict exactly how it's going to go, how it's going to be received, what people are looking for, taste change, appetites change, and so on. And 805 seems to have struck a nerve. It's a lot of craft beer, particularly, became very fussy and very complicated, and the stories got longer and longer and longer. And 805s didn't. It was built. There's only two types of people on the Central Coast. You know this, right?
Sure.
You're either a cowboy or you're a surfer.
Yep.
And everybody
rides a motorcycle.
Exactly.
There you go.
But if, and you can look at anyone here and just, you don't necessarily have to have cows to be a cowboy, but that means you have a nice pair of Ariat boots or something.
Sure.
It means that you listen to this radio station, perhaps. It means that you sort of aspire in that direction. Much of our Hispanic community would be in that category, in dress and culture, absolutely, farm-based and so on. And then there's the surf side, which is maybe you don't surf, but you own a Tommy Bahama shirt, and you sort of those scenes evoke, what makes you happy when you're relaxing. That's how you relax. You're listening to Jimmy Buffett instead of Garth Brooks.
Totally.
All right. So 805 spoke to both of those people. It is the surfer cowboy side, and the imagery that we pushed, and the other side that we did, which I think was effective, is we did something called Authenticos, where we didn't pick anybody that anybody ever knew, but everybody we picked you knew. It was, we had a Hispanic
hometown heroes,
but nobody who was trying to make a market on something. It was just a barber, it's a welder, it was several cowboys.
It's the people who drank your beer.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And we would watch them, we'd look, and we'd just say, you're a drummer in this band, you're our people. And the drummer would get not a contract. We give him a bunch of beer. He'd let us take some pictures and put his name out.
And he's excited.
Yeah, he's excited about it.
Totally.
The rest of the band is, why are you on all the billboards?
I have a bunch of different friends that are all over the world, and especially the motorcycle community, which I bring that one up as well, because it was like, this is what we drink.
Yeah.
And it turned, I loved that line, and maybe that's what sparked it in my head was, it's what we drink around here.
Right.
Which I thought was like, oh man, they hit that one right in the teeth. That was early. That was very good though. Yeah. So as 805, as Firestone Walker Brewing progressed, how did food become a part of it? Well, because you were doing that pretty early on. So we started, before we moved to Paso, in Buellton, we had the tasting room.
We thought, well, look, we got to give people a chance. We haven't had this yet. We don't have a tasting room, and there wasn't the explosion of tasting rooms like there are now, but we felt like we got to get some customer sampling. So we converted the front end of the building there in Buellton on the side of the road to a tasting room. Mm-hmm. And we had our beers in there, and it was kind of bubbling along. And then somebody said, "Do you have anything to eat?" Well, sure, we had pretzels and then peanuts, and you could have either peanuts or pretzels or both. And then we bought a toaster oven, and we were serving American flatbread from
Full Life,
out of Full Life, and so we served those for a while, and out of a little. And then it was clear we needed to get a food program together, and so that's when the restaurant idea began. And I always take a deep intake on the restaurant business is challenging. Mm-hmm. It's important to complement the beers and so on, but it's a whole different industry. And anyway, so then
so you know, it's my son's personally favorite restaurant. It's 100% true. I mean, when you were talking about the Central Coast person, right? My son plays water polo, so he loves to surf, and we preg check cows together, right? So he kind of like falls right in. When you said there's only two types of people, I'm like, yeah, I'm the father of one of those kids. And the fact that he plays water polo means I can barely afford to feed him.
Right.
And every time it's just me and him one night, and mom's doing something, I go, what do you want to do? He goes, Firestones. Every time. I'm like, why? He's like, I want the beef. I want the beast burger. Yeah. I want this. I need this. And I'm
big portions.
Big portions. It's fantastic.
Yeah, no, it's and the other, there's, I would wager there's no listener to this radio show who doesn't have somebody either in their family or a next door neighbor or somewhere whose kid hasn't worked for us at some point.
It's totally true.
Tables or everybody.
Totally true. I remember the old Cobra Head taps that you guys had there. Those were fantastic. Yeah. They'd all ice up, and you're like, "This is going to be a nice cold beer." I want an ice cold beer and a thin-lipped glass, man. It was great. Yep. So when you guys started experimenting, and I know craft brewing today is much different than it was like when you're saying the early 2000s, right? Right. You started experimenting with like the Velvet Merc and a lot of different aspects. It's like, what brought you into those? Because you've won a ton of gold medals all around the world. You've had success commercially, but have a great reputation as well. And how did that kind of progress?
Similar to winemaking, there is a inclination for any kind of artisanal brewer to experiment. And it's not that it's not important. You got to do the main thing right. And we always talk about that. And you got to fold in on yourself each time. And each beer has got to be better than the last one of the same recipe. You can never achieve perfection. You're always in pursuit of perfection. And that was one of our sort of mantras for many, many, still is. But there's the need to experiment and try different things, and it's born of that. And we started with a small pilot plant where we do experimentation brews, and if it had a run, then we might put it on tap. If it was accepted or recognized and appreciated, enjoyed, then we'd expand it. Mm-hmm. And a number of ours...
Like a test kitchen.
Like a test kitchen. And now we have we built in 2016, we built a facility down in Venice, California, where we have a significant R&D facility brewery there, which is developing new recipes. It's a very sophisticated brew house. It mirrors our larger one up in Paso, but we can do it on a micro scale there.
And you can fail fast.
And you can fail fast. If it works, it doesn't. And almost every successful beer we've had since 2016 began there.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it's been a great addition.
So I know we're talking to Adam Firestone of Firestone Walker Brewing and Firestone family in Santa Ynez Valley. Your family's also involved in this, but beyond your brother-in-law,
right?
Your son,
right?
And so what's he doing now?
So Nick grew up here, went to Ballard Elementary and so on, and he, he went to Naval Academy. He's a lot smarter than his dad. So
go Navy. Yeah. There you go. You finally got it back in.
Yeah, I'd recommend this to anybody whose kid's thinking about it, especially if this is your second kid. You'll know it because you paid the tuition on your first. Go to a service academy.
I'm right there, actually. Yeah.
Anyway, so Nick then did Marine options. So he was an artillery officer. He did 3 tours, and the last one was a full year in Afghanistan. And he was like, at the end of that, Dad, this is endless. And the tours started getting really, really long. So got out, worked for us for a short period of time, and then went to business school. Like I said, he's smarter than the rest of us. And then,
isn't that the goal?
It is the goal, exactly. Then he was a consultant, which makes you the smartest person in the room, right? You're
being paid to tell other people what you think.
Exactly.
I love that.
And then we could come home, we'd be talking about projects. He goes, Dad, you can't afford us, and he's right. We couldn't. His firm was very expensive. Yeah. So anyway, but then COVID hit, and he was up in San Francisco, and everything scattered, and so he ended up coming home, as everybody did when things went sideways. And then he came on board and fixed a lot of things. Figured out. I mean, so many things that it's.
How great did that feel as a dad,
the best.
by the way?
It is the best. And all those things that you didn't really understand, and spreadsheets and this and that. I mean, it's just a whole different level of training and expertise. And then, he sort of rose up, and I'm looking at him. I'm looking at David. David was then CEO. And so we fired David, and we promoted Nick, and and so that was last year. So he runs the show now.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. Good, cheap family labor.
Yeah, nothing better. One of the things I kind of did want to discuss with you is, like, I've always thought with craft brewing, it's always interesting to me that, and tell me if I'm wrong, that however many beers Samuel Adams makes, that's how big craft brewing is, or that's the top of craft brewing.
Right.
Where do you guys fall in that? I've heard rumors, and I'm asking the horse now.
Well, this is going to sound. This isn't boasting or
No.
bloviating or anything here, but we make more beer than Sam Adams. However, Sam Adams isn't making very much beer anymore. They're making Truly and seltzers and iced tea, hard iced tea, and lemonade and so on. So their alternate beverages is the vast majority of what they do.
Got it.
Beer, I mean, just to bring the conversation to current, beer's in a strange place right now, as is wine and spirits, in fact, all. And it's because there's this idea somehow, I think it's mislaid, that, beer's going to make me, I'm going to gain weight, I shouldn't be doing this. And so instead I'm going to have alcoholic fruit juice. It's sugar and alcohol.
Which is twice as bad for you.
Twice as bad, and
I agree.
Twice the calories and whatever. But that's just the phase that we're in, I think, and it's been for a while. There is a big movement towards temperance, and that's a different conversation. I think there's too much temperance, and this idea that all alcohol is bad, I think is wrong. I think it's time-tested beverage of civilization, and certainly it can be abused, but anything can be abused. And unfortunately, I think there's good evidence coming out that kids just spending all night on screens, and by kids I mean college and young adults, spending their time on screens and socially recluse from social interactions is unfortunate. There's a great Professor Scott, Holloway, I think his name is.
The death of happy hour.
Death of happy hour.
Is we could talk about this for an hour, because the incremental pain you're doing to your liver, quote unquote, is if by not going out and having a beer or having a glass of wine, right? And the isolation that an app, I'm like, when I look at my phone, the phones have failed us. That's the bottom line, because now, you don't stand in line in the bank. And if you stand in line in the bank, you talk to your neighbor and say, hey, how you doing? What's going on? People order, have contactless delivery at their home, and they're not interacting with someone. You need to go out. One of the greatest parts about living in the Santa Ynez Valley is going to El Rancho and it taking you an hour to get out of the store because everybody wants to talk to you.
Absolutely.
And the isolation and the mental crisis that not sitting on the porch with your wife and opening a bottle of wine and just sitting and talking, watching the sun go down, or calling friends to come over and say, hey, what can I get you? A crack of beer. We're going to go sit outside and watch the game, whatever. COVID, and I'll be on this soapbox forever, but I'll get off of it quickly. I continuously go back to the term social distancing was one of the most parasitic and one of the most damaging terms in human existence that there ever has been. Because what happened to us? We retreated. We went into our home. We closed the doors. We didn't go out. We didn't interact. We didn't go have that beer after work where really everything gets done, and you go, hey, that guy's pretty great. I got their back, right? Or they're great with me. I really like them. You get to know somebody, and all of a sudden those 2 beers you had or those 2 glasses of wine you had that kind of, you felt better when you were done than you did in the beginning. It took all of that steam that just compiles in your brain that has nowhere to go, and it kind of gives it a blow-off valve.
I can give you an observation as a 64-year-old guy who grew up in this community.
I want it.
And I've been fortunate to travel a lot in this business. Every community that I've seen that is ultimately kind of harmonious and happy, they have 2 things. You have a coffee shop and you have a bar. And that means that there is a place to go and socially interact in the morning and there's a place to go and socially interact at the end of the day. And to take that, as you say, the social distancing, but to remove that from a community, because everything is a drive-through community now, right? Even your Starbucks, if you walk in, it's waiting for you. It is so damaging. And I think, I think of
we have to hit elbows.
Something's got to happen. Something's got to change. You think of all the kids, this many kids are now on this drug and that drug and depressed and this, and he's 32 years old living in his mother's basement. There's a reason. And the withdrawal side of this is, I think it's just damaging for the long haul. And so that's, and conversely, I think it's why Santa Ynez does well. We do well with our pubs. We do well with our coffee shops.
Yeah.
Santa Barbara County is extension, even so. I mean, there's a great article in the Independent today about the coffee shops of Santa Barbara. And you sit back and go, God, that's a lot. And you go, no, that's not enough. That's what you need. And likewise, whether it's a pub, a bar, somewhere you go in, you socially connect with folks. And as you say, El Rancho, all the more so. It should take you 20 minutes in line there, and you shouldn't be in a hurry.
Absolutely, and I think it's one of the great features, not only of the Santa Barbara County, but Central Coast, Southern Los Olivos, Ballard, Solvang, everywhere around. When you go in, when you brought up the coffee shop and the pub, right, or the coffee shop and the taste room, my day. I go to the coffee shop. It's the first thing I do, and I always make the joke that it's the last decision I get to make until I decide when to open a bottle of wine and sit back and relax, because it is full tilt boogie after that. But as you are bumping into those people, you are forming connections, and you're forming long lasting connections, because a community is only the people that you see on an everyday basis that you're interacting with, that you wave to.
Right.
And I love driving Alamo Pintado or anywhere else where every car you're waving, hey, how's it going? How's it going? How's it going? Because one of the things we've seen with, like, say, Southern California, especially Altadena was a multi-generational homes that were people that have been there, and they knew grandpa that lived in the house originally, and now it's the great grandkids were being raised in those homes.
Yep.
And as soon as those homes are gone, it just takes 1 year. 1 year and a community is gone.
Right.
And because even if you rebuild the homes, the people coming back will be different.
Right.
And I think that's one of the things that, for me, I love the Santa Ynez Valley, and it's one of the things of your family in particular. I think that you guys are community builders in everything that you do. I know your father Brooks, I know your son, I know you, and one of the things I've always have seen your family do, like even the Episcopal Church, right? Bringing people together in a group setting and smiling and laughing and having a great time. Even your brother hosting every single fundraiser I've ever been to. What you guys do as a community, as a family, is bring people together and make sure they're having a great time.
Right. One of my favorite experiences was a few years ago. I was in line at Egan Brothers to get a Christmas tree, and I was back in the line, and someone was there, and I don't want to typecast, but this person was clearly not local, and
I like to use the term "cidiot."
Okay, I'm trying to be more political. And she was in a real hurry, and she was, pushing on one of the to get going. And old man Egan looks over at her, and he gets up and he goes, we just don't operate that fast here.
Yeah.
And we're going to just take time to celebrate Christmas or something. He put it in a just magical way.
The way that only an Egan could.
And only an Egan
be
could.
Terrified, but also smiling at the same time. Yeah.
But the reason I share that is it was the impact on the lady, because at first I could tell that she's like, no, that's how you operate in in Santa Monica or wherever she was from. And all of a sudden she sort of did a double take, and it was like, God bless you, you're right.
Yep.
And let me just inhale, exhale, and realize I don't have to be anywhere. And let me enjoy the popcorn and the kids running around, and my turn will come up in a short minute. Anyway, it was this transitional effect of her. And to me, in a microcosm, I think that's what the Valley and Central California can do to people who make the decision. They move here, they get into the groove, and they understand the vibe and the tone. It's a great way to live. So let's keep it that way.
It's one of the most fantastic parts about living in a beautiful place, because it slows down your heartbeat a little bit. You drive the long way home. You try to sit on the back porch. I love getting photos of sunsets by other people who live in the valley, which you get too. Everybody, I think it's one of
Did you see this one? It's like literally we have a house on the same ridge.
This is exact. I think that's one of the quietest, most interesting parts of the Santa Ynez Valley. If you're getting photographs of the sunset in the town you live in by your friends
in real time,
and you might be sitting there on the couch, or you might be, or I'm sitting in a tractor, right? And all of a sudden, ding, 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 and you go, what? And you're like, oh, wow, yeah, that is a good one, right?
But the best part is the fact that they know you're in the valley, and they still feel like they got to tell you this because that's how they cherish it, which is great.
But that's what it's like to live in the snow globe, right? And but the one thing I am optimistic, very much so, because not just saying like, and big beer companies, big wine companies, big alcohol companies, whatnot. What I truly enjoy and where I think that the puck is going, where I'm hoping the puck is going, is I'm seeing younger and younger people. I have a 21-year-old daughter who's in Texas Christian University. I have a 17-year-old son. And one of the things I'm seeing from them is their friendships need to be in person.
Right.
And they were the kids that went through social distancing. Mm-hmm. And now I have 12 boys at my house every Friday and Saturday night because they're all out doing something and everybody ends up at our house. No matter what they're doing, we become the home everybody lands at. Mm-hmm. And the thing that brings me warmth is they understood what it was like to be a junior high kid or a high school kid,
right,
and locked in a house, and they go, I'm never doing that again. Right. It's almost like they had their quote unquote war, right, or their hard times or hard years. And they're like, I'm never going back to that.
Right.
And that generation that's coming up loves being together. They love going to live concerts. They love interacting with each other. And I think they more than a 25 to 40-year-old mm-hmm. Understand that community is important, right, and they want to know their neighbors, and they say things to each other that maybe I would never. I mean, I have a 17-year-old son. When anybody leaves, they get up, they hug each other, and say, "I love you," when they leave. Right. And I'm like, that warms my heart. I mean, it could be happening just here, but I get the feeling it's happening all over the place. And we're just waiting for those guys to catch up, and we have to deal them in. We have to deal that generation in and say, hey, you guys seem to have it figured out. How are you doing this?
Right. Well, look, COVID is one, no question. Thankfully, that insanity is past, and we'll look back on this.
It's going to be a dark age.
We lost our minds on this thing. It was so poorly handled, and I think a lot of people knew it was being poorly handled right at the get-go. But in any case, that milk is spilt. In terms of, I think there's challenges. As a parent and a grandparent, the screen issue is a big one. That thing is, the algorithms are so damn good. I mean, they are so good. They capture you. I'm sure you get a steady stream of motorcycles.
Oh, yeah.
And
you like this? I'll give you some more.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just mainline. And that is going to be for parents, particularly of younger kids. That's going to be an arm wrestle. And my kids are their kids are pretty small, but getting there. And when they do, they're already sensitive to the fact this is something we're going to have to deal with. Every parent's going to have to deal with it to bring us back into the moment, and not just delegate everything to this fake world.
There's a real life out there to be lived. And going back to the sunset photos, I love the fact that we all live in a place where the sunset photos get passed around, right, and people do go have a glass of wine. And I think the Santa Ynez Valley in particular, and what I'm very hopeful for, is people are finding out about it more and more. Mm-hmm. And I think 50 years ago or 50 some years ago, when you guys established the Santa Barbara County AVA, built a winery, it really put a stake in the ground, and people came over the hill. They found us. And more and more people who do come over the hill are hit to the top of the pass, and they look down and they see Lake Kachuma and beautiful green hills, and they go, why has no one told me that this place existed? Yeah. And then they do everything they can. They go, how do I live here? That's the second question.
I think I hope, and I'll say this as someone who's lived here a while, that people, my neighbors, are, we recognize that we can cherish and really enjoy what's here, and we're happy we're not living in Reseda or whatever it is, for all the reasons we've discussed. But I hope there is a collective feeling of responsibility for it, because we need, and this is my solicitation, we need representation. We need trustees and curators of this who are prepared to, push back on the lunacies that can interrupt what's magical about this place. And Brooks was certainly that guy. He was committed to politics, still is. I mean, he's still with us, but I would hope, whether it's school boards and city councils and boards and this and that, boy, I hope we all recognize how important that is. This stuff can slip away from you quickly and be mismanaged. And there's plenty of municipalities and other places that are, this state particularly, that are hopelessly mismanaged and didn't need to be.
Yeah.
People just took their eye off the ball. They felt they didn't have to get involved. And next thing you know, their schools shut down because somebody thought something was, I don't know, whatever, the silly reason. We saw it during COVID.
Sure.
We got to send all the kids home because they might make the teacher sick or something. And that was just crushing for the kids. Anyway, so that's my request.
Well, number one, I want to say thank you for giving up your time to come in. I love the fact that I got to piece a lot of the stories I kind of already knew together, and thank you for being transparent and sharing the overall story of not only your story but your family's story, and what it took to build Firestone Walker Brewing into the juggernaut that it is. So thanks for coming in. This has been Keith Saarloos and Adam Firestone on Chopping It Up 105.9 Crazy Country. Back to your regularly scheduled programming.